Welcome to the Tech Transfer Podcast. I'm Dave Brown. I'm here with both Bennett and Adam, and we just got back from the Autumn Conference, annual conference that was in Washington, D.C. And so let's see, Adam, do you want to tell us what is Autumn? What's the annual conference all about?
Yeah, Autumn's an association of people affiliated with tech transfer in various degrees. It originally started out specifically for university tech transfer, and it's since broadened its focus. Lots of people from industry there, law firms, tech transfers from universities, as well as from hospitals and other medical organizations, things like that. A lot of service providers of software and things are there. And we talk about all things tech transfer.
Yeah, and so you get, it's an organization, professional organization. So you get some awards, some lifetime achievement things and stuff like that. But what people seem to be really excited about is exchanging actual tactics, like what we do in tech transfer. So Bennett, what were some key takeaways for you?
Yeah, so I went with the intention of focusing on trying to get into the panels and kind of the talks where people were from industry representing their view of tech transfer, common pitfalls, things to avoid. And, this year compared to last year, going in with that focus, I feel like I got a lot more out of the conference, as far as understanding what is important from an industry perspective to keep that in mind as we're trying to license these technologies.
Okay, and what is important? What did you get?
So flexibility seems to be important. Everybody wants to look at their part of the tech transfer process as being the most important, which industry is no exception, right? They feel that the commercialization aspect is as important as the initial research. And so figuring out how to add value from their perspective, I don't know, it was just interesting to see what was important to them and what wasn't important to them, and how we can add value from the tech transfer perspective.
Can you think of anything that was surprisingly not important to them?
Surprisingly not important.
Maybe, one I picked up was patenting.
Yes,
That was really
no,
downplayed by industry. And you do see, we do some great deals where there really isn't much patent protection. I mean, obviously I'm doing software, so that's why, but
yeah.
no, what else?
I feel like they thought that having some control over that was important, but really the patent strategy, like they have their own internal guidelines as far as what they're doing as a company, especially for some of the larger companies. And so as long as we haven't, publicly disclosed, the entire invention and lost all patentability rights, like they really didn't seem to care. And as far as the structure of the agreement, assignment versus, a license versus, they're covering costs, we're covering costs. Like it really just came down to the more flexibility we can give them in how they approach the IP is more important than actually having this huge, robust, nationalized across the world type of IP portfolio for them before they take a look at the technology.
Yeah, totally agree. So the thing that was foremost on my mind was this is the first time I've done a panel at the national meeting. I have done regional before, but so I was leading the panel, the commentator, the what do you call it, for the Venture Studios panel, and the moderator. There we go. So we had Ken Malone from Early Charm Ventures, he was great. He was outspoken and very real with us. It was really refreshing. Then Kip McCoy, who's Vice President of Innovation Studios at OSF Healthcare, and he's done both internal and external studio things, super interesting. And then Quan Nguyen, it was his idea. He's from Nguyen and Target IP, a patent attorney, but he's worked a lot with angels and ventures, so it was really great. So what I took away from the panel, though, was the questions that people asked. And there were one person asked us anonymously, because we were taking questions via LinkedIn, which I recommend. I thought that worked out pretty well. But one person asked, what are your results with venture studio startups versus other startups? I thought that was a really intelligent question. And honestly, our results with venture startups have been subpar, like worse than our other startups. I think it's because you have a tendency to think, well, once I hand it to the venture, done deal, like we're good to go from here, to the venture studio rather. But we need to treat venture studios like we do any entrepreneur and do our due diligence and kind of keep on their case a little bit. So venture studios are an interesting opportunity, but need to be treated like any licensee. And if anyone is unaware, venture studios are venture capitalists essentially who take a raw technology and build the company themselves around it. Really interesting. That's blown up. And so I thought it was a timely panel and it was really fun to do. Another question, why not do this internally? Some universities have done that. And Kip pointed out that he said it very nicely, but that you can drink your own Kool-Aid. You might not, at university, you might not have enough contact with the real world to be honest about the opportunity if you're doing a venture yourself. And so, you know, validation could fix that. What are you saying, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked some of Ken's comments in that panel, and I thought that the venture studios options really, especially with respect to what Bennett said about the IP was valued a little bit less in his view. But I thought that really provided an alternate pathway for a lot of smaller inventions that might not see as much value, but you can get value out of these inventions without having to worry as much about getting the patent in place. And the venture studios, they value more the interaction with the inventor, because like as he said, a lot of inventions start off in one place and then morph over time to get to somewhere different. And so that was pretty, I thought, fairly interesting. And in conjunction with some of the AI technology that we saw, First Ignite and some of the things that they're doing, give us opportunities to tap into publications as they're happening. And maybe some of those inventions are going to be limited to US protection potentially, but you can engage with the professors and the venture studios and take those technologies that might get overlooked otherwise and get them out to the studios and turn them into an asset that otherwise wouldn't be there.
Yeah. Ken was super interesting, made that point. It's kind of like, InventRight, the Andrew Krause group in Las Vegas that we've had on the podcast. Their whole thing is you can license a raw technology. Yeah, file a provisional application to protect yourself, but you don't need extensive IP. And that turns out to be true in many cases. So Ken was great. You mentioned also First Ignite, which we use First Ignite as of a couple of weeks ago and are really happy with it so far. But did either of you attend? I was at the AI session, which was packed. I mean, the takeaway for me was the AI tools session was hugely appealing to people. Did you both go to it?
I did.
Okay. Okay. Adam, what were takeaways from that? What do you think?
Well, I mean, takeaways are keep experimenting with it, and and kind of the from a tech transfer employee perspective is, it's going to be basically something that everyone will have to de rigueur have in their tool belt to become a valuable employee. The employees of today that fail to embrace and learn how to use AI to make their tech transfer offices work better are the ones that will get left behind and will eventually be unemployable, I think is the not very nice way to say it, but it's the reality of what's out there. But there's a lot of tools. You can use it for a lot of different things. You can use it to improve efficiency. You can use it to do new things that you wouldn't do otherwise before. And there's various modalities to look at it. And I think the big takeaway is experiment with it. To the extent you can use university, locked up tools. And if not, then use free ones. But again, if you're using the free ones that aren't locked up, where you're contributing to the training, then you have to be careful. But other than that, that's the kind of the big things.
Yeah, and most people in the room seem to be pretty aware of the basic tools. What were Bennett, what were some of your takeaways from that one?
Yeah, I think the one kind of comment that stuck out to me was AI is the worst it's ever going to be right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's only going to get better from here. And so it reminds me a lot of like early days of the internet or online retail or any kind of emerging technology that's increasing your efficiency as an employee or as an individual, right? Like we've talked about on previous podcast episodes about how some of the first, single person billion dollar companies are going to be enabled by AI. And so if you stay on top of the tools and stay up with the trends, then it's only going to get better from here. And all the things that are clunky or don't quite work or the hallucinations that come through AI, that's only going to get better. And so staying up to date is going to be incredibly important moving forward.
Yeah, totally. And you both touched on this a bit, but one comment that stood out to me was people were saying, AI is going to help us do this, and this. And I like the idea of doing things that we've never done before, but personal relationships are still going to be critical. And what's funny about that is, it's probably true, maybe, but we want it to be true, which makes me skeptical. It's the sort of thing we want to believe. And I see this on LinkedIn. I've mentioned it a couple of times on LinkedIn, but I don't know, maybe people don't want to talk about this. But every industry, every micro industry is having this conversation right now. They're like, well, AI can do all these amazing things, but you'll always need a person to do such and such. It's like, yeah, I'm not sure. Like the work is going to be transformed, and we got to get ready for the fact that what we're doing might be very different from what we're doing right now. which would be great.
Yeah.
I still maintain that with AI tools, we're all managers now. There can be no worker bees because the AI tools will do like grunt work. We all have to be a little more high level, a little more visionary, more directional. So, but it's an exciting, interesting time. So
Yeah.
what were the other good sessions? I have a few that I thought were kind of good. What you don't want sometimes, there are different types of sessions at any industry meeting. And there was one that was the top 10 cases. I didn't find my notes for that, the top 10 legal cases. It was the same guy who does it at the Licensing and Executive Society meeting each year, which is always the most popular session there. It was pretty popular here too. So that's interesting to see. And actually, while I'm mentioning it, Adam, did you grab any legal takeaways from that? I can think of a couple.
Yeah, I mean, I went to that session. I went to a couple of the legal sessions, and it's interesting. I did that same thing last year, kind of had a legal focus, and went, I looked at some of the sessions about AI and MI, or excuse me, ML patent cases, and I went to that
What's ML? Sorry,
machine learning.
machine learning. Okay.
So I went to that session both last time and this time, and there were very, very, very minimal differences between the two. So it was a lot of a rehash. But interesting things. It's particularly aimed at life sciences, and but it is applicable to patents on AI and machine learning as well, in any area. It was interesting to see. Yes, there are ways to get those patents through. My overall feeling on some of the legal cases, maybe I don't know if I'm a little jaded coming from a patent law practice for years and then coming into the tech transfer side of things, but I guess for me, I don't find those sessions quite as helpful as I would hope they might be. I don't know what Autumn could do to make them better. I mean, to some extent, you just have to know what the newest law is, and that there's a purpose for some of those.
Well, and also some attorneys that are signing up for continuing legal education,
Right.
they have to have some content so they can get their CLE credits.
Yeah, and credit to Autumn. I mean, they offered up to 12 CLE credits for attorneys that wanted that there. So I mean, that's gonna for most attorneys, that's gonna fulfill most of your legal requirements, other than maybe your ethics requirements for a lot of states. So that's a good thing. But I don't know, some of the CLE law-based ones, I don't know what they could do to help get a little bit more than just here's the most recent updates to the case law. A few takeaways here and there, but they could present that in maybe 10 minutes and be done. I don't know.
Well, we tried to make our panel a little more lively, like a little more choppy and tactical. And we talked beforehand repeatedly, we're going to make it like gritty and tactical. And so we tried to do that. And so that could be done. But with a legal thing, why not have a debate? Like have two people on opposite sides of an issue? Like I would go watch that. That'd be fun. And so I think there's just a tradition of professional conferences of having four people very politely sit and talk at an academic level. It just doesn't have to be that. But then also, Autumn, we're focusing on the sessions. A lot of the good stuff happens outside the sessions. I had some interesting conversations. Bennett, did you have any conversations that stood out for you?
Yeah, I had a couple good conversations with individuals, kind of throughout, but in the closing, kind of get together that they do, talking to people. And it's funny to see like different offices dealing with the same problems that we're all dealing with, rounding up inventors and making sure we're getting disclosures in, working through terms. And I feel like one of the takeaways that I took from those conversations is that our focus here at BYU internally on being flexible and having, the flexibility to assign agreements or to take an exit position versus equity, that gives us speed when it comes to working through some of these agreements. I was talking to somebody and they had been going back and forth on, a fairly simple agreement for months and months and months. And it's just, I mean, you're going to kill everybody's momentum. You're going to kill the excitement. And so it
annoys
just,
the professors and
yes, and it annoys the professors. It annoys everybody, right? Nobody wants to go back and forth for months and months. So it reminded me of the progress that we're making internally within our office, and just to keep that mindset of being as flexible as we reasonably can be, and just to move things through quickly, right? Entrepreneurship, a lot of times is about speed. How quickly can you get things moving? Because any kind of delay just offsets that time to first dollar.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was interesting to me, the people I talked to, how many people from foreign countries are coming and looking at what we're doing in the United States in tech transfer to see what they can mimic in their jurisdictions. It's not so much that they're coming to try and find US licensees or whatever, but they're trying to come and say, hey, what's the US doing? So I think there is a lot of good happening in the US on the tech transfer side, and other countries are looking to us and trying to say, hey, how can we do that in Singapore and the US and UK, I mean, and wherever else they're coming from. It's interesting to see how much interest there is in that.
Yeah, one lunch I was saying between people from Poland and people from Brazil, as we were just talking about the issues. And one thing that was funny, tech transfer just is what it is, and they had all the same issues, just a little different government flavor on grants and so on. And it is nice. Like sometimes I'll look at foreign news to understand U.S. issues better, and they had really refreshing perspectives on all the federal grant and political issues that people are worked up about at Autumn right now. I did not. I don't know. Some people were really into talking about that aspect, the federal funding issues going on, but I was not interested because I think it'll just all pass in a few months. So,
Yeah, and that was kind of my general takeaway when I did have those conversations, is that there's a few individuals that I talked to who are really, really worried about it, but most people were like, oh, it'll get worked out, right? It's not like federal
yes.
funding's gonna completely go away. So as long as we just keep moving forward, things will shake out like they're supposed to.
Yeah, we've been through some legislative scares before when they were doing patent reform.
Yeah.
People were all worked out.
Yeah.
And I didn't love everything that came out of it, but yeah, we're doing okay. So
Yeah.
let's see. One conversation I had that was really good was about medical schools, because we're getting our medical school sometime in the not too distant future. And so I'm always interested in what people have to say about that. And so I got some good advice. This time people have told me that gearing up for medical school, you need to make sure your IP sharing agreements and so on are good, especially if you're partnering with outside hospitals, which the BOU has announced that they'll be partnering heavily with Intermountain Health. I'm sure there will be others as well, University of Utah, other entities. But then also this person was telling me you need to have a well-known policy for consulting, because she said the doctors or people working in the medical school are going to do a lot of consulting, and they might not understand that affects their university work. So anyway, so that was helpful and practical. I'll act on that one for sure. Let's see, anything else? What else stood out? There were a few sessions where we start talking about internal or external partnerships. They'll say, well, you need to meet with your faculty and educate them on how all this works. And I was like, I don't know how often the faculty wants to meet and be educated by me, but what was your take on that?
Well, I thought it was the thing that I took away more was, you know, how our licensing efforts are really connecting the licensees or the assignees with the professor's knowledge base, not so much just a single patent or a single technology, but the technology in conjunction with the professors. And I think that we need to make sure that we're helping our professors understand that part of the whole deal is, hey, you're engaging with this company and helping your research move forward by helping them get the technology moving forward as well. So I think that that's something that I think sometimes it's easy to overlook and think, oh, we're just licensing an IP or licensing a patent or whatever. And the truly beneficial licenses, the best licensors are of the professor's knowledge and the grad student's knowledge,
Sure.
that hand-in-hand interaction that's going to go on for months to years after that initial agreement is signed.
And for years, I've told entrepreneurs, like when you're screening a technology, look at not just the technology's patentability and marketability, but also the professor you'll be working with. Like this is a relationship that matters. Make sure that you guys click at some level. And so maybe I've never done this, but when we send people marketing information about a technology, maybe we should send them some kind of dossier about the faculty member too. This is what they've done, and maybe that would give them some credibility, or at least help them understand how they arrived at whatever technology it is.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of information for the researchers as well. I think sometimes when we connect entrepreneurs with researchers, for whatever reason, they have a tendency to downplay the research that they're doing, right? They don't want to overpromise. They want to make sure that whatever they say they can do, that they can do. And that's all fine and good, right? I would never say anything bad about that. But sometimes when you're talking with an entrepreneur, the entrepreneur is like forward looking, they're thinking big, right? What could possibly be done, in the best case situation, not in the worst case situation. So I think a few touch points with researchers, just providing just a little bit of coaching there of, hey, like in these early conversations, really be optimistic in what could be done, understanding that you're bound by reality and bound by the constraints that you have here at the university. So I think that was one takeaway that I took from one of the panels that I sat through, of just that little bit of coaching can be really helpful.
Yeah, and in dealing with outside entities, if you're a university researcher, when you're speaking with an outside entity about research, you should probably be really conservative because You don't want them to expect a deliverable or something.
Right, right.
When it's a commercialization conversation, yeah, let's hear your vision. Let's hear where you'd really like this thing to go.
Yeah.
So good. Let's see, a couple other things I thought were interesting. People talked about metrics that they use at their university. I was really impressed by a couple speakers who were doing some internal analysis that we don't do. So for example, metrics for tracking partnering with outside entities. Someone said they were including number of university contacts, number of investor meetings, and pitch decks sent. I'm not sure about that last one. Like I could get on email and send pitch decks to a lot of people. I'm not sure that would matter, but you can see like people are just grappling with, we need to do more marketing oriented metrics. So I think that's all for the good.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see. I took the negotiations course, the little sub course that they have this year and last year as well. And the course this year was kind of talking about motivations and how their impacts your license negotiations and what you focus on and what comes out of the agreement. And they talked about things like equity versus royalties and different things like that. But it was interesting to hear then in other presentations someone talking about, oh yeah, we've got our metrics where we have to hit X licenses over the year, and it's just like they're making bad decisions on some of the licensing terms just because they're so constrained by we have to get X licenses by the end of the fiscal year and things like that. It's interesting to think about some of those motivations and what some of the metrics impose on the tech transfer office in terms of some of the metrics demand, I guess, impose on the tech transfer offices, and how that might be affecting the tech transfer office's efficiency and results in possibly negative ways.
Yeah, we have I'm skeptical of all metrics for that reason, that like people can get the cart in front of the horse and start focusing on the metrics instead of actually what you're trying to accomplish. So I think let me say how I think we handle that, and if it works. In staff meeting every week, we start by going over more vision aspects of the office, like really high level things we're trying to do. And my goal with that, I think what that does is then guide the subsequent discussion so we can't get off the rails too far with some metric. We do have, and we don't have to say it on the podcast, but we do have one specific number goal we're going after for the year, and we're going hard and we're on track and it's going well. And so I think that's healthy, but if that ever got in the way of the big vision, we would abandon it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, good. Let's see, one other session, I don't know what to tell you from it, but one other session I thought was pretty good was there was one called Copyright Licensing of Diverse Assets or something like that. And they were just talking about all the things you could commercialize that you might not be commercializing. So they talked about open source. I so often have professors come who say, look, I want this to be released open source so that other academics can use it for free. But if anyone uses it commercially, we want to charge them. And my initial thought is, well, what if someone says they're using it for free or like academically, but they're actually making money? How would we know? Are we going to police that, et cetera? So you see all the issues, but other people have faced the same thing. One thing that the speaker mentioned is that instead of having professors put their code in GitHub, you could have a university repository where they put their code like, don't use GitHub, use this instead. And then there could be some sort of clearance process. You'd have to be fast, but you'd catch things before they're released open source. I don't know that I'll do that, but it was at least an idea I hadn't thought of before that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, anything else big? We have the autumn regional coming up in when is it, Adam? It's August.
That's September 30th, October 1st in Salt Lake City. It was interesting to be in that meeting. There was a lot
of
discussion of doing some alternate things at that meeting, including a pitch competition, some of the things that we do here on campus just with our own entrepreneurs, but there are things that they're thinking about doing in the autumn regional meeting, and it'll be interesting to see what they actually come to do. It sounds like the University of Utah is doing a lot of some of the same ideas that we have as well, as far as trying to increase student startups, increase startups from the professors as well. And so it looks like they're trending towards some new programs up there that can be some good things that might get demonstrated and talked about at that autumn regional meetings. So be interesting to participate in that coming up.
Yeah, that's great. I hope they do a pitch thing or just anything we haven't seen before would be great. The I feel like we've never encouraged a professor to launch a startup company. Like when professors launch startup companies here, it's 100% of the time, I believe, because they approach us wanting to be the one to take the technology. Am I wrong about that? Like,
That seems, it comports with my
Yeah.
feel as well.
I don't know if we would, yeah, I don't know if we would want to push professors because we don't want them to leave, you know, and so it's kind of ambiguous there. But in terms of like grad students, student researchers, yes, launch a
Yeah.
startup, like be a technical founder, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So okay, well, overall, I felt like it was worth going. The panel was fun to do. Hanging out with the members of the panel was fun too, and then a few little tidbits here that were worthwhile. So it was good.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I thought was interesting is that there seemed to be much more concern about government funding at that regional planning meeting than, you know, than there was amongst the actual big panels. And so I think that is something that a lot of people are concerned about on the underground. We might see more of that coming up in future meetings. I mean, you know, a lot of this was programmed before the change in government happened. And so I don't know how much people were talking specifically about government funding issues. Again, I agree that I think that most of it will peter out and turn out okay, but there was a lot of concern expressed in that meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. The reality is, like you said, we'll adjust to whatever happens, and whatever does happen won't change the way we're doing things here very much. But yeah, some universities are being massively affected, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But okay, last word, Bennett. What do you think?
No, I think it was good. It's always, I tried to wander into a few meetings that I wouldn't usually go to, right? And so the results from that were a little bit, you know, different. We really didn't, I don't have much to say about those other than there's lots of different approaches here. And it's always fun to see the different perspectives and meet people in the industry. And if nothing else, it confirms that what we're doing here truly is, I believe, you know, the path that we should be moving forward with. So no, it was a good experience, always a good experience.
Yeah, I got to add one other thing. Like in the session when we were doing hot takes at the end, I said that Colorado University at Boulder is the best in the business. Like as far as I can tell, they launched 35 startups last year, and that was met with general agreement. I felt like I had a couple
Yep.
other conversations where I think people agree, and I just like that people are looking to the top. When they're looking to the top university, it actually is the top university. Like people understand that UC Boulder is killing it. So. So anyway, that's nice. I just, it all felt like a little more tactical and goal oriented than some meetings in the past. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks guys. That's it. We'll be back next week.